Hello and welcome to An Idol Called Food. I'm your host, JT Tapias, and in today's episode, we're going to be speaking about the famous plateau. If there's one thing I hear over and over and over for 2 decades now, is the whole idea of the plateau and what people perceive to be the plateau. But I'm here to explain a very different aspect of what I believe is a plateau. But before we go on, I want to let you know that this episode is sponsored by the EYB plan, fuel.com supplements that make a significant difference in your nutrition. If you're always on the run, if you are maybe not necessarily having or getting your macro balance, but you're interested in constantly bringing in your micro balance, then go to EYBplanfuel.com, check out the supplements there. And I promise that even if your diet is 60%, but you're bringing in the right macros, you're going to feel better, you're going to perform better, and you're going to basically get to your goals a lot faster if you are supplementing correctly. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. And as I was mentioning earlier here when we started, one of the things that I get the most is, JT, I feel like I've hit a plateau. I feel like I'm stagnated, I'm not losing weight. And I think it's important for us to look at the definition of what a plateau actually is, okay? And there is a metaphorical definition, which is what people mention when they say they've hit a plateau, they're on any kind of diet. Because there's also a geographical type of plateau, but we're not talking about that one today. We're speaking more about the metaphorical plateau, a state of no change following a period of activity or progress. People get very, very confused when these things happen. They've done everything. They think they've done everything right. Next thing you know, they're not losing weight. And they're just thinking, hey, something needs to change, right? I often joke and I say, did you hit a plateau? So in Spanish, the word plateau is plate, and it's spelled Plato, plateau. Did you hit the plate versus the plateau, which is Plateau? I joke, but in all seriousness, I believe that oftentimes people eat a little too much, or sometimes they bring in some subconscious calories that they don't even realize. What do I mean by subconscious calories? We are so used to just picking things up and putting them in our mouth without even thinking about it, that it just happens automatically. And we don't want to do those things, but we do them so often and so naturally that sometimes we don't even realize it. So I want to go on and explain a little bit more in depth what I believe is a plateau. And I can't do that without actually explaining to you what fat is made of. So fat is made up of individual cells called adipocytes. And adipocytes basically are, they play a critical role in the survival of humans, right? We are basically, fat is a survival mechanism. Fat is an efficient, lightweight, insulating energy source. In other words, if you live in a cold place, having high body fat percentages is going to help, especially if it's extreme, especially if you are in any kind of emergency and where you can go into hypothermia. If you have higher body fat, then you're going to be insulated, you're going to be protected. For most of us, we don't want that extra fat, but the truth is it's there to protect us. It's a very clever, efficient form of energy regulation. So it's sort of like this buffering that we have around our body that is there to regulate energy, okay? Energy is the most important, this energy is the most important organ in the body. And so if you think about it, fat is an actual organ, and its main intention really is to regulate the energy that goes in, and of course the energy that comes into our body in the form of calories. It's critical to have energy. It's critical to have fat in order for you to survive a famine, a shortage, any of these things. As a matter of fact, you've probably seen people that have gotten pretty sick, pretty ill, and they had very low body fat percentages, and those people don't last very long, unfortunately, versus the person that maybe has 40, 50, 60 pounds overweight. They get really, really, really sick, and they kind of hold on a little longer simply because they have that fat as an insulating energy source there. And so let's just say that fat is not always a bad thing. It's our body's way of protecting us. And so when it comes to weight loss, right, we have to think of this idea. There are only two main rules that need to be remembered and mastered when it comes to how energy is regulated in our body. So energy in minus energy out, right? So energy in is food, the food we consume. Energy out is the exercise, not just when you go to the gym, but actually breathing, thinking, and all the things that are required for you to basically go on and go about your day. So energy in food, energy out exercise equals energy stored fat. So we bring in energy, we utilize some for our functions, and then whatever stays is what is stored. This is the main thing we need to understand in regulating energy, right? There's also this thing that most people call a plateau that truly is called negative feedback. And it's when your metabolism slows down weight loss or even weight gain, right, to regulate and protect us. And this is what we call a plateau. So oftentimes we see people that are doing all the right things, right? The people are doing their cardio, they're getting the right portions, the right macros, the right micros, but yet nothing is changing. They weigh in 6, 7 days later, and they're just blown away because they haven't lost any weight. And they're like, what's going on? I did all the right things. Why am I not losing weight? And people get very confused. But what they don't understand is that the body has some buffering mechanisms that it utilizes so that you don't die, okay? This is similar to the concept of the hangover. If a person drinks too much alcohol, the next day they feel horrible so that they won't do that to their body again. When the body perceives that you're losing too much weight, it also holds it back. It's called negative feedback. When the body is gaining too much weight, it stops it so that you don't gain more weight. I always say that this is a really, really good thing. Negative feedback is not necessarily a bad thing. It's there to protect us. Negative feedback is controlled by a hormone that is secreted from the hypothalamus, and it's called leptin. The more fat you have, the more leptin you have. So hear me out. Leptin is kind of this regulator that says, hey, we need more calories. We need more energy coming in, or we don't need as much. It regulates sort of how satiated you are. This is a really, really important hormone to understand because many years ago, they didn't understand how these things were regulated. As a matter of fact, I'll go as far as saying this: the vast majority of physicians have not trained in energy regulation. They are well trained in the ways we are hydrated, right? Because they have to keep our hydration levels. But energy regulation in medical school is not something that doctors really look into. As a matter of fact, I think in the 4th semester, they may breeze through a little bit of nutrition, but most physicians know very, very little about nutrition unless they've actually trained and they've done it on their own because it's not required in medical school. Very scary, right? So don't go to your physician for nutrition guidance. You want to go to a dietitian, you want to go to a nutritionist, but don't go to your doctor because they're usually going to tell you eat less, move more, and that's about it. So getting back to this whole leptin thing, leptin, this hormone, is an energy regulator. And as I said, the more fat you have, the more leptin you have. So if you've been eating a surplus of calories for a long time, right? You've had a ton of food, maybe Thanksgiving came around and you just ate a ton of calories. Leptin is signaling your brain that you need more energy than you actually need. So what you do is basically you inform your body that you need to bring in more calories. And so if you've ever battled with this whole idea of constantly being hungry, it's because your leptin levels are signaling that you need more calories. And then what happens when these things happen is that fat not only stores energy, but it also controls how much we use, right? Think about this. If you have high levels of fat, you're trying to release weight, but you're constantly feeling hungry. It's almost like you're fighting you're in this fight that you're never going to win, right? You're trying to lose the weight, but you're constantly being hungry. It's because your leptin levels are used to an amount of calories coming in. That's what you've gotten your body used to. And based on that, you weigh a specific amount, meaning that you have a set point for your weight. This is why oftentimes people inside of programs, weight loss programs, will say, it seems like I get to a certain point and then I don't stop losing weight, because that's where your body is comfortable. Your body is very much like the gauges in your car. they're used to basically signaling where they need to be. And if you've gotten your body accustomed to being at 300 pounds for X amount of years, your body, even though it's not comfortable and even though it would appreciate you losing the weight, that's its set point. That's where it feels comfortable. This is what's normal to the body. And that weight is regulated by those leptin levels and how hungry or not you are. So that's the thing that we inside of the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan are constantly talking to people about, is how do we actually get your body, right, to start releasing weight and getting away from that quote unquote comfortable space. It's called consistency. It's called staying in the program as long as possible, sticking to the parameters, adhering to the principles as much as possible. Here's the other interesting thing about negative feedback, or what we call a plateau. If you're at 300 pounds, if it weren't for negative feedback, right, you would be 700 pounds. If your body weren't buffering and protecting you, right, you wouldn't be 300, you would be 700 pounds. So this is where it works the other way as well. The body is always seeking homeostasis, meaning it's always seeking this balance. And that's very important because that's what the body perceives to be healthy. So a lot of things here to think about, but more importantly, I want you to think of this. If you want to simplify things, then just think of the human body as a box, okay? The box transforms chemical energy from food into heat, right? Movement and thought. So you bring in calories and then your body is utilizing it. It's converting it to energy, to chemical energy, right? And then that chemical energy is being converted into heat. And then you are basically putting out these calories in the form of movement, thought, and everything you need in order to function on a daily basis. The rest of the energy in, energy out, energy stored, remember, you want to keep that in mind. But more importantly, you want to understand that in order for you to actually make progress, if you hit a plateau, in my experience, the vast majority of people just pull away. Right? The vast majority of people are like, oh, this is it. This is as much weight as I'm going to lose. This always happens to me. I don't lose any more weight. The thing that I tell my members all the time is you need to persist adhering to principles for an extended period of time. You need to get your body very accustomed to this new lifestyle. It takes a while. The problem is most of us want quick wins. And when we stop seeing those quick wins, we just run in the opposite direction thinking this is not going to work for me. Nothing can be further from the truth. So what can you do if you're stuck, but you're willing to get unstuck? Number one, before we actually go and say that it's your body protecting you and you're experiencing negative feedback, in other words, a plateau, we need to figure out if you're bringing in additional calories. Can I just say that some of the biggest foes are sauces, sodium, right? And bringing in excess sodium, maybe adding too much fat to your food. Even healthy fats are good for you, but maybe you're saturating your body with calories from fat. You're bringing in too much sodium. You're bringing in too many sauces. Maybe you drench your salads and you're like, wait, I don't understand. I always have salads. Yeah, but if you're drenching your salads, 2-3 tablespoons of a dressing can bump up your calories 200, 300 calories just with the dressing, right? So we need to really do an audit of what are the things that we're eating and what are some of the subconscious things that we're eating that we don't even know about. Maybe we're snacking without even realizing it, right? Number two, you need to play around with intermittent fasting. You see, I don't think intermittent fasting is the greatest tool for weight loss simply because you stop eating, but because you cut down on snacking time, which I think it's a big challenge for most people. So if you have, let's say, the most popular the most popular sort of timeline for intermittent fasting is 16-8, 16 hours of fasting, 8-hour window of eating. So what that looks like is you stop eating at dinner time, you skip breakfast, and then you eat again at 12:30, right? Right there, you're fasted for 16 hours. And then from, let's say, 12:30 to 7, you have this open window, 7.5 hours of open window. And then you're making sure that you're eating, three nice, well, maybe two meals and a shake, right? So maybe 12:30 you're having a shake, right around 4. 12:30 maybe you're having a shake or a meal, and then let's say if you had a meal at 12:30, at 4 you would have a shake, and then at 7 you would have another meal. And then you want to make sure, more importantly, that your macro balance, right? I don't want to get into that here because I don't have enough time to break it down, and I'm speaking to a broad audience, so I can't get very specific. But of course, we want to stay away from things that spike a lot of insulin, those high insulin yielding foods. In other words, starches, so breads, pastas, things such as legumes in the form of beans, lentils, garbanzos, nuts, almonds, seeds. These things spike more insulin than other macronutrients, so we want to be careful with that. You also want to consider, point number 4 here is you want to consider consistency, okay? Consistency in the times you eat, more from a structural standpoint, because I think oftentimes we get super, super busy and we skip through meals, and the next meal you have is just huge because you're so hungry because you've gone 5-6 hours without eating. So nutrient timing is pivotal. You want to make sure you stay consistent with your times. So if you decide you're going to eat at 9, 12, 4, and 7, do that consistently, 7 days a week, right? Try not to vary too much. Number 5, you need proper hydration, right? Not just drinking water. Ideally, you want to bring some form of an electrolyte, right? So that you're getting some electrolytes. I'm a big fan of Keto K 1000. Check it out online. Keto K 1000. We don't sell electrolytes. And so, just happy to give you this free information, which it will be a game changer, right? You need to hydrate well. But from a water perspective, I would say at a minimum, and I say at a minimum, emphasizing minimum, 36 ounces. You want to get to half a gallon to a gallon of water a day. You want to progressively do that if you're not a water drinker, but hydration is really, really important. Number 6, daily bowel movements, right? If you're not going to the bathroom, you're just holding in a lot of toxicity, and you don't want to have that toxicity there. You want to make sure that you're getting plenty of fiber. One of the best ways to go about that is maybe just adding something like Benefiber to your morning routine every morning. Just take 2 little scoops of Benefiber, put it in whatever drink you have with your breakfast. Don't add it to your coffee. Maybe you drink water, just add some Benefiber to it. It'll get things flowing. We need more fiber in our diets, right? We get those from fibrous carbs, vegetables, specifically green leafy veggies. But if you're not a veggie person, maybe you can just get some Benefiber, and that can really, really help. Number 7, you need to minimize, as I mentioned earlier, those starches. If you're constantly eating starches, you're secreting lots of glycogen that's being stored in your liver and your muscle. And so if you're having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you're adding starchy carbohydrates, you're not really measuring those, it can get really tricky. So you want to minimize those starchy carbohydrates as much as possible. Number 8, our BMR, our basal metabolic rate, can be increased by simply walking more, moving more. You can set an alarm on your phone so that every 60 minutes, if you have a desk job, you're getting up, you're walking around, and you're increasing that basal metabolic rate. Instead of, when you go to the supermarket or you go to the mall, instead of finding a parking up front, you park way far from the mall, so you have to walk there and walk your way back. Instead of taking the elevator, use the stairs. Activate your physiology as much as possible. Common sense says the more calories you burn, the less you store. And so we want to make sure that we are super proactive with that. Number 9, you want to do resistance training. I believe that we need more muscle, especially as we age. But think about this, right? When you do resistance training, you actually help your body cope with negative stress. So here are 2 concepts. Resistance training is positive stress, right? It is a form of positive stress on your body. But then you have negative stress. And this is when your boss gets on you, when you have deadlines, when kids are screaming and life is crazy. That's negative feedback, right? That's a negative sort of, resistance that you don't want, right? Negative stress. And so the way to counteract that negative stress is simply to train with positive stress. Resistance training helps you cope with all the other stuff that you can't control and that just hits your windshield, right? So think of training from a very different perspective. Yes, you want to gain muscle. Yes, you want to be lean. You want to look good. All those things are valuable, but more importantly, you want to train yourself to deal with the negative stress in your life. And that happens when you actually incorporate positive stress in the form of resistance training or something that will get your heart rate up. Lastly, number 10, we need to normalize these leptin levels, that hormone that I mentioned that is secreted, from the hypothalamus and tells our body how much food we need. We need to regulate that. The best way to regulate that, once again, is through consistency. And so find a plan that works for you. Consistently apply yourself to that plan for 3, 6, 9, 12 months, however long it takes. You can take little breaks in there. You can have little cheat meals, but you want to consistently, I would say 80 to 90% do the right thing, and you're going to yield amazing, amazing benefits. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I'm JT Tapias with an idol called food. And today we spoke about explaining the famous plateau. In conclusion, I want to say this. Maybe your body is buffering, maybe your body is protecting you, but maybe, only maybe, you're just simply bringing extra calories and you're not even realizing it. So I gave you 10 points that you can apply if you feel stuck in one way or the other that help you identify either the excess calories or just give you hope and understanding that your body's protecting you, and we just need to be consistent through the process so the body can release the weight. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. JT Tapias with an idol called food. I'll talk to you guys soon. Ciao, ciao.